All right. Welcome back to the world famous Tipitinas. Thank you so much to Tipitinas for letting us use the space. Thank you to Nugs.net for letting us use the equipment. And I hope you are enjoying this on Tipitinas.tv. We have a very special guest, so I'm not going to mess around too much. My guest today has written, recorded, and performed with too many people to begin listing. He's been honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award from Bass Player Magazine, Offbeat Magazine, and a little startup organization called the Grammys, if you've heard of them. It's kind of a big deal. He recently released the new single for Crying for Hope from the upcoming album for the Running Partners, which is the first recorded material in over 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And also, this is a weird little tidbit, the longest reigning king of oak in the history of the crew of oak. Ladies and gentlemen, and people of all different everythings, George Porter Jr.
You're right.
Thanks for being here, George. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
That little tidbit about the king of oak, you are 2 years in a row. Are they going to do it back-to-back since we didn't get to do a Midsummer
Yeah,
Mardi
that's
Gras?
basically I'm back-to-back, and yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Me and Queen Annie.
That's a big deal. Annie's wonderful. And I only bring it up only to pat myself on the back as being loosely associated with the royalty as well, since my wife was queen a few years ago.
Oh,
so
cool.
I did get to be the royal pork boy for 1 year.
Yeah, you're right.
And I guess that puts me in the ranks with Tom Morell now, huh?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yep.
And I did also mention Lifetime Achievement Award from the Grammys. Was that a big deal? Because I know that you said that it was obviously a very big deal, but that it didn't have the same impact as some of the other recognition that you've gotten locally.
I mean, that Grammy thing, as great of a, as the honor that, and I'm absolutely honored the fact that,
I didn't want
that's
to leave that
a natural honor. But it's something for me that being honored for our longevity versus our music.
Yeah.
And I was, I'm somehow concerned that, that we still aren't being considered good enough musically.
You think so?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they ain't give us a Grammy. Hey, where's my Grammy?
Yeah. That's a good point.
But I'm good, man. The Offbeat Music Award and Bass Players Magazine Lifetime Achievement Awards were really wonderful. All three were very well presented.
Yeah.
The presentation was over the top on all three. But I'm still waiting for that Grammy record. That recording thing.
There's still time. Don't worry.
I'm still and I'm hoping that it'll be something I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's wind it back a little bit. Born in New Orleans.
Yes.
At which hospital?
Charity Hospital.
Born at Charity, big charity. Where did you go to school?
St. Catherine and James. What that was? Durham Junior High School, and I dropped out of high school.
All right, which high school was it?
It would have been Booker Washington.
Okay, all right. And
Booker T. Washington.
Booker T. Washington, yeah, correct. What neighborhood were you living in when you were a little kid?
I was living in the 3rd Ward, which is like, we were always told as kids that there was this big building. I was raised pretty much on Gravier Street, and there was 2 big buildings in our lives. That was in. One was Falstaff Brewery, which was on the corner.
Yeah.
And then the block from there was Broad and Tulane, Broad and Gravier, which is Parish Prison.
Yeah.
So the parents always, not necessarily parents, but my mom always said that those 2 buildings you should avoid. If you can live your whole life and not have to be involved with those 2 buildings, So I never drank Falstaff. I never drank it. I've avoided that building, but I did visit Parish Prison.
Okay. We don't have to tell that story if you don't want.
No, that's not a story we want to tell.
Okay, that's fine.
But it's in the books.
Oh, it's on the record. Yeah,
it's on record. So, I'm definitely on record as being one of their members.
An alumnus.
I'm an alumnus, right? Yeah. Me and Cato was up there around the same time.
You had mentioned how you saw the interview that we did with Reggie Scanlon, and I love Reggie. Like, you guys are 2 of my favorite bass players of all time, absolutely. But you and him are both in a lot of the same, not the same category necessarily, but you're kind of one of these guys that has been there to bridge the gap from the old New Orleans, like old guys that were old guys when you were young and starting out, and people that were there at the beginning, at the turn of the century, the 1900s or whatever, that were still hanging around playing, all the way up till today, playing with the kids, you know, that are coming out of college, coming out of high school right now. Does that ever, when you look back at least, does that resonate at all with you? Just kind of connecting with the original sounds of New Orleans with the current sounds of New Orleans?
I always had a thing about my playing, is that I always thought that if you call me to come play in your play in your outfit, that I have to leave my ego at the door and get into the pocket that that your organization is requiring me to be.
Yeah.
Now, unless your organization has said that we want you to come play meters or George Porter Jr., throughout our whole gig, I just ignore that, because it's not that's not going to happen, because I just can't play meters against music that isn't meters.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I mean, I have to be a part of the music that I'm in at that time, and I've successfully done that really well, and I believe that's the reason why I get the phone calls that I get, from artists like Tori Amos, like Jimmy Buffett, like David Byrne, those were individuals. I mean, those were bands that I individually visited and performed with,
Sound nothing alike each other, or the meters for that matter.
Exactly.
Either. Yeah. Well, speak on that a little bit more then, checking your ego at the door. There's, I'm sure there's plenty of gigs that you've passed up on just because the money wasn't there. Like, hey, man, like, George Porter Jr., you're just going to take more than $150 to get me to come play or whatever.
I played a couple of those.
Yeah, no. Hey, I mean, you're here now, aren't you?
Yeah,
you're here for a fancy bottle of water.
It's not always necessary. The money isn't always the factor of whether I do something or don't do it. When I first started doing those gigs with Johnny Vodakovich and the trios, and that performance down by I believe the club was called Funky Butts, I believe, down on St. Claude.
Funky Butt, yeah.
That
On Rampart. Sorry to correct you.
That was
Funky
it?
Butt was on Rampart, yeah.
On Rampart, yeah. That was that was pretty much a door gig. You never knew which was going to walk out of there with, but just because the three people that was in that group, it was so adventurous that it caught on. It was Eric Traub and Johnny and myself, but for the most part, probably 60% of the people that was in there were musicians,
Yeah.
But we were just doing something that, I don't think, and I can't say it for sure, but I don't think nobody else in town was doing what we were doing at the time, because we were just playing. We had no song list. We had no plan as far as what we was going to play. We just, sometimes, this happened to somebody else too, that in my band, that happened with someone. But I was sitting there waiting for somebody to tell me where we're going, and Johnny was diddling and doing things, and Eric started doing things, and Eric pulled a horn out of his mouth and looked at him and said, "The gig just started." I said, "Oh, okay." And at that point, I had to kind of listen. And and hear, and I have a fairly good hearing as far as knowing keys by sound.
Yeah.
I can hear that Eric was playing in a D minor, versus he could have been playing a D minor thing, but he was playing an A minor, And then it may have taken a second or two for me to determine whether he's in D minor or A minor. So but I've always had that knack of knowing what key you in.
Yeah.
You know.
When you're with Johnny Vodakovich, and I've seen you, I don't know how many dozens, if not hundreds of times playing with Johnny. He's all over the place, man. Like it must be hard to pin down where he's going with stuff all the time.
Right, exactly. And he does things where he turns beats around where if you're not paying attention, you would absolutely be left out in the cold out there. But one of the things I loved about what was going on with that organization was that we didn't allow train wrecks to become train wrecks.
Find a way out of it.
We find our way out of it. And I mean, it used to be so funny is that, we would come to an end of the song and it would just end. And I would be trying to say, should I play another note? I mean, is this a solo? It was great. Those were some wonderful musical times, and we took that gig from Funky Butts to Old Point Bar to
did it here for a minute
to
too.
here for a little while, right?
Yeah.
And then from here to the Maple Leaf, and then it became resident at the Maple Leaf, for forever.
Well, so I guess that goes to say that the gigs aren't always about the money. Has there ever been gigs that you passed up because musically you wanted nothing to do with it?
Yes. I can't say why or who.
Okay.
I wouldn't go as far as to call out any players.
No, I wouldn't want you to say anyone's name specific. Is there any type of music that you try to avoid?
No, it wasn't a type. It wasn't a type of music. It was probably more just not something I would want to do. And as well as how much homework is going to be required for me to play that gig. I can feel. I mean, people send me music, and I have to learn that music to play that gig.
Yeah, like you said, check your ego at the door.
But then there are times that people call me to come play a gig. They don't send me nothing, and I just have to show up and be what we're going to do. But then I'm constantly reminded that that it's what you do, and people tend to expect that, he's just going to play music, and so I have to consciously make an effort to pay attention to what's going on around me.
Do you find that very difficult a lot of times? Like I know that like you've done the Artist at Large at Jam Cruise or Bear Creek or some of those other festivals and shows. Is that something that you ever have any kind of fear of still? Do you get nervous about those? Like, hey, you know what? I've only played with 2 of these guys, but this is a seasoned band.
Yeah.
I know a couple of these guys, but I don't know that many of their songs. Do
Right.
you have to like do a lot of homework before those, or do you just kind of feel it and wing it?
Well, let's see. I think I was brought onto the stage with the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I mean, they use plenty of your licks. That's
And,
for sure.
and we performed one of their songs that was kind of based on the idea of I think it was Jungle Man, I believe, but it wasn't Jungle Man at all.
Yeah.
But it was kind of that, and Flea just was it Flea? Yes,
Flea's the bit, yeah.
Yeah, Flea just looked over and said, "Just be you." Hey, just be me. You want to tell me what key is?
Yeah, exactly. I think, God, I'm trying to think back to some of those Chili Pepper albums. Hollywood, I think, is like directly borrowing Africa.
Yes, Hollywood, and we were compensated for that. They actually licensed the song. So one of the few times that our music was licensed or used, and license was requested. That was one of the few times out of more than 175, 78 songs.
Yeah, I was going to say, you jumped ahead. I got, a whole bunch of questions and things I want to talk about, but let's jump ahead to it if you don't mind. Y'all have been sampled a couple hundred times.
Well, it's 178 times total.
Oh, exactly 178.
That we know
of.
about. Yes, right.
Well, I mean, like you said, there was a lot of issues, I know, in those early days with getting publishing rights and everything else. when you look back at it, what kind of choices do you think you wish you would have made different back then? Would it even been an option to take more control of your music back then?
Well, I don't even think it had much to do with how much options we now. First of all, the majority of the music that has been sampled and reused and stuff were musics that management had all of the publishing and stuff on. They controlled all that. And you know, it took almost 30 years before the meters actually got their publishing, and we didn't really get our publishing back. We just started getting paid.
Yeah.
You know, because you know the former management, the old management, which we won't name, you probably know who they are, but we won't name them. But when Bug Music, a deal was made in order for old management to get out of a lawsuit that had been filed against them by the 4 meters, and that even after 3 of us had signed off on the agreement, Zig continued going after his throat. You know, but Bug Music still inherited our publishing on a lot of those early music. Everything before this Cabbage Alley music. Cabbage Alley music was a publishing company set up for the meters by management.
Okay.
But management still controlled Cabbage Alley music.
Yeah.
So when Bug Music got control of that stuff, at that point, Bug Music started paying us, you know, our royalties, because before, old management was saying that we were in debt, and whatever monies that came into on our publishing or our artist monies, they would just take that as, you know, as a payment towards our credit, our debt, which is we come to find out years later is that Warner Brothers and Josie Records. When Josie Records went belly up, you know, they automatically, you know, they whatever debt you owed to them was, you know, was swept under the table.
Yeah.
But management was still charging us that old debt.
Man.
So that was, you know, that was the hard and the ugly part about the business that we're in, is that, you know, young players, and I think that's probably may still be in existence. You know,
It absolutely
you know,
is.
because you know, you know, there's management. It has to come out of that dark ages, because it's just, you know, young people just don't trust them because of the dark ages. You know, and they just figure that, you know, management has what you call a bad name.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and no matter who's the manager, you know, he just has to be so far on top on top of his, what's the word, honesty, for not for a better word, that you know, that sometimes those guys, you know, the new guys on the block that's trying to do this, working for hardly nothing.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to prove that I'm here for you, not you here for me. You know.
I think something that's common in, you know, I want to talk more about this for sure. I know 1 or 2 people that are in management. Some of them, you know, they lay out their ground rules with their artists very clearly on paper, and others are like, no contracts. I'm your manager. The day you think someone else can do my job better than me, you can have
You
it. You
yes.
can walk away and go to them. Yeah, I mean, do you have any feelings one way or another about that?
No, I mean, that's, you know, in fact, I believe I'm in a situation like that now.
You don't have a contract?
I don't
with
have
your
a
manager?
contract with them. It's, you know, it's a handshake agreement over a phone line, and you know, and for the most part, for the last probably 3-4 years, you know, it's been very workable. You know, even with the booking agency. Now that might be something that's going to change soon, since, you know, since COVID has decided to run us all inside, and so I actually got a email the other day from BMI saying that the face of management is changing.
Yeah.
You know, so be on the lookout or something like that. It's something like that. That was the title, the dark print at the top of the thing. You know, the subject line.
I mean, the BMIs and ASCAPs, I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to get in trouble because,
Yes,
burn my house down or something. But it's funny when we get bills for things like that where it's like, oh, hey, you owe this much for the quarter. It's like,
Right.
you realize we haven't been playing music. Like, why are we paying you? Like, it's a really edgy thing. But, and I don't want to get into that part again because I'm scared of them. But
Oh no, because I mean, you know, the whole idea, the fact that that even though you're not playing any music or you're not performing any music, you're still paying for it, and it's, you know, and it's not like you're paying them, but it's, I mean, they get a piece of it, but majority of it goes to the artists of those songs that you.
I mean, it's set up with a good purpose.
It's so small. I mean, you know, there's like probably a song is like 0.3% or something
you know,
like that.
the dollars. It takes a lot to add up to dollars.
Yeah.
For sure. But aside from all that, something that you touched on a little bit that you weren't sure if it happens too much, people getting messed over by management. There's a much better education out there for young people starting out in the music business, especially since you know there's so many people that can start up and get into this industry without a record label's help because you can record stuff at your home if you have a good computer and a good microphone. Then you can start recording. So the industry has changed entirely. The business aspect has been chasing the technology to keep up because it's been getting away from the business and into the hands of the artists more and more.
Right.
Which I think everyone agrees that's kind of a good thing because someone like George Porter Jr., I'm sure it hurts to have to be the example on why not to do something. It's like,
and also, you know, the thing is that being George Porter Jr. at 73, record labels ain't interested in that. You know, because you know they want. I mean, if they're gonna put any money into something, you gotta be at that age limit where they figure we can got 15 years of income from you.
Yeah, because they think they can hold on to you.
They can hold on to you for that. You know, I mean, I think Prince threw a big brick in the industry. You know, when he started, you know, producing and recording his own music and putting it out there in the world. I mean, he gave away, you know, 2 platinum records. You know, just to show the record labels that I don't need you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's and that was like. That was great. But it was Prince.
Yeah.
You know. So George Porter Jr. couldn't do that, and you know, survive the, you know. Maybe I could because my overhead now isn't, you know. In other words, it don't cost me, you know, $40,000 to cut a single.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, I go up on the 3rd floor of my house, turn the lights on, and record.
Yeah.
You know, and as the studio has grown, has grown, and then my technique at recording has getting the sound on to this hard drive and getting it off of that drive.
Yeah.
You know, I've learned more. So you know. And with the help of you know, some really great friends, you know, like Michael Limler, my musical director.
Is he your musical director?
That's what I call him.
That's what you call him?
Okay. I tell everybody, but that's
I mean, phenomenal on keys, you know? Absolutely.
He's well, he knows his way around that that recording stuff too. You know, and I know my way around it, but when I was really good at it is when it was analog. You know, but this digital world is kind of, you know, setting me back a few. And then if I go away for a couple of weeks, when I come back, I got to learn over again, which is nuts, you know. But then that comes with age, you know. If you don't do it enough, you know, you forget it.
I suppose. So the new single "Crying for Hope" that you put out about a month and a half ago. Was that recorded at your home?
Yes, that was recorded
entirely at your home. All right.
Entirely. You know, it was recorded in the cloud.
Okay, yeah.
But you know, everybody was in the individual studios. So Mike's keyboards was done at his house.
Okay.
and Chris Atkins' guitar parts was done at his house. And then Terrence not having a studio of his own yet because he still lives in an apartment, which where he'll get evicted if he set up a set of drums. But he would go to a friend of his that has a studio and has a set. He has a kit that's set up and is mic'd and ready to do whatever he needs to do.
Nice.
You know, we just send him a 2-track mix of the song with all of our parts already in it. You know, and he just overdubs to the existing song. Yeah. So now, you know, he's not, you know, he can tend to bend himself to every little niche that's being played in the song because he hears the whole song now, you know. Yeah. And which is, you know, it's cool. It took us longer to do the record this way, I believe. You know, probably 2 weeks longer than it would have taken us if we would have all went in the room and did it, you know. And I think the hardest part was of all of the music was just me being happy with my vocals versus my bass lines. Okay. Because, you know, a lot of the songs got wrote as instrumentals, and then the vocals was added to it. You know, Miss Mia Borders was one of the co-writers of lyrics. Miss Susan Calso was one of the lyricists. And Miss Sullivan, Denise Sullivan, you know, was another person that contributed lyrics. Oh, and Leslie Smith. I found one of the songs that was, you know, we had has probably like an 8-year history on, and we redid it, and I couldn't find out. I didn't remember. I said, man, these lyrics, they just don't sound like all me, you know. And Susan and Mia said it wasn't them, and so I sent it to Leslie, and Leslie sent me an email back with the original lyrics. But, you know, say, well, this is the original lyrics. You've changed it some, but this is what they really were. And that's when I remember that. I remember that. Okay, so Leslie got one of the songs on the record also.
Was it a song that had been touched on with George Porter's Joyride?
No, not that far back. No. It definitely wasn't Joyride. No.
Leslie was in Joyride with you, right?
No, she wasn't. Leslie was never in our band.
Never in Joyride? Never. That's strange, because I have a little knick-knack, because I met Leslie Smith, met up with her a few weeks back, and she gave me this little thing. I don't know, Tanner, if you can see that. Can you see that from there? I want to hold it so that Tanner can get it in the camera. This is a flyer for George Porter's Joyride, opening up for Dr. John, December 23rd in I want to say 1983 or something like that. I can't remember. You can keep that, by the way. Artwork by Coco Robichaux, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Probably so, yeah.
No, she was telling me stories about Joyride and going back and forth with you about whether or not that Joyride had or had not opened for Dr. John, and then she found that and was like, yes, they did. I knew that they did.
Yeah. So. You know, when Joyride was happening, Leslie, I think I might have been playing with Leslie at Tyler's. Okay. One night a week. I'm not sure what night it was. It must have been a Thursday night or something like that. And it was kind of sort of jazzy R&B kind of a gig, but no, Leslie never actually performed with Joyride.
Okay. I totally misunderstood the story she was telling me. It was a little all over the place. It was early. So. Your very first instrument was actually guitar. I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Very first instrument was actually keyboard, piano.
It was keyboard, piano, so I was totally wrong about that.
But the guitar was the longest running lessons that was taken. The keyboard thing was probably only lasted maybe 3 lessons, like within 3 weeks, one lesson a week, you know. The competition between Zigaboo and myself, his brother was my piano teacher.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And the competition between Zig and myself just got to his mother decided that this got to end. So the piano lessons ended, yeah. Okay. I studied guitar for 2 years.
Yeah, formal lessons.
Formal lessons, you know, once a week for 2 years. Yes, did 2 recitals, and in the second recital, I abandoned the song that I was supposed to play, and played a blues that I wasn't supposed to play. And you know, and my teacher was very upset about that.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, "You go ahead on about your business." You know.
You got fired as a student.
I got fired as a student.
Hit the bricks. I'm pretty sure I heard you say this, that the songs that you were being taught, aside from just the regular lessons, they were teaching a lot of those old cowboy songs just to get the rudimentary skills of how classical guitar, literally the fingering, I guess.
Correct, that's correct. And I understood, you know, later on, well, you know, what made me really come to the conclusion that I was never ever going to play classical guitar was when I heard Segovia, you know, and I heard what they was calling classical guitarists. And I said, I don't even understand that. I mean, I'm not going to play that. You know, that's absolutely. You know, and I mean, I heard Papi and his grandfather playing, you know, blues in St. Louis Woman, and you know, those songs were, for me, were more appealing, sound wise, and. So versus, you know, Home on the Range and Red River Valley and stuff like that. Not to diminish those songs, you know, because those are great tunes. But, you know, Papi's grandfather used to play using the classical guitar fingering, which, you know, for me, I just thought that, man, my teacher should be teaching me how to play those songs, you know, versus those songs, you know, because, you know, that's my community. You know, I'm certainly not a cowboy.
So, I was going to ask if you still
I didn't even wear boots.
Do you still like any of those old cowboy tunes? Are some of those fun? You like any country western stuff from the old days?
I've listened to it, but no, but you know, I'm a fan of what's, I can't think of his name now. I'm the old man, you know, the old hippie. What's his name? Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson,
oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was the old man, the old hippie.
You know,
Willie Nelson. Thanks, Denise.
I'm a big fan of Willie Nelson. I mean, I've always liked, and you know, for me, I just always thought he was more gospel than bluesy than country. You know, because he just seemed to have a different grit about, you know, versus, you know, the guys that came out of, you know, the Nashville sound and stuff, you know.
Well, I know, you know, Art Neville was way into cowboy, just a lot of old country music. The George Jones, Hank Williams, Waylon Jennings,
him and
Aaron,
like him and Aaron Porter Stevens was Aaron was. I think they were close. I believe they knew each other. Yeah, he was a big fan of those guys. You know, of that music because of that characteristics with the yodeling thing, you know. Aaron did that so good.
Yeah, he can control his voice real well. Since, you know, I brought him up, I might as well go ahead and talk about it. The first meeting with Art Neville told you that you were a crappy guitar player, which I think is hilarious.
No, he didn't say crap. He said worse.
The worst. I'm sorry. I gave you too much credit. You're the worst guitar player
He
ever.
said you are the worst guitar player I've ever heard. You know, because I mean, I was not a soloist. You know, I was a rhythm guitar player, and you know, even today, I'm still pretty much consider myself a rhythm guitar player.
But you still do play pretty regularly, huh?
Not at home.
Yeah,
you know,
that's what I meant.
nobody would hire me to play guitar. I can't solo.
Well, I don't know. I mean, this is crazy times. If anyone needs a rhythm guitar player for hire, reach out to George Porter Jr.'s website. I'm sure he might be willing to do it. Maybe if the money's there or the gig is cool enough, as he said himself. Right? Sorry. But he discovered you as a bass player, ultimately playing with Irvin Bannister, right?
That's correct. That's correct, yes.
Was it just playing a lot of house parties and fraternity parties and stuff?
No, we were actually playing in a nightclub called the Cindy Club. It was off the corner of Galvez and it was on Galvez Street off the corner of Washington Avenue. And across the street from there, on the corner, was a club, was a key club, but called Charlie's Corner. But it was a key club, and then all of the guys like the guys that the upper class musicians hung out, or the high dollar deep pocket black folks would hang out there, but it was a key club, but you didn't have a key. The guy would open a little door and look out the window, and he knew everybody that would come.
Okay.
Fats Domino used to hang over there. Art Neville was singing over there. He came out there the night that, it was sort of like maybe once or twice a month. Fats would come out of the Cindy Club, out of the Charlie's Corner, come across the street by the Cindy Club, where Irvin and I was playing, and he would want, he'd be nice and juiced. And he want to sit in and play piano, So he would come in, and it's always usually about half hour before the gig is over with.
Y'all are ramping down.
We ready to go home, and Fats would come and sit in, and he'll play for an hour. So that one particular night, Art followed Fats across the street. And he saw me perform, backing up Fats Domino, and after the gig, he come in, he walked over to me and said, "Now that's the instrument you ought to be playing. You want a gig," and that's how that happened.
So you must have been what, 18, 19 when this happened?
I must have been about 18. Yeah, I've kind of lost track of when I started doing things because I did a lot of drugs.
Yeah, I was there. I don't know.
Yeah, and it was, so I always, like, I used to kind of, I remember kind of figuring out when my daughter was born, we were on Bourbon Street. I knew that. That was 1968.
At the Ivanhoe?
At the Ivanhoe, yeah. Now, that part I'm pretty secure with.
Okay.
And I'm thinking also that it was probably that same year when Sophisticated Sissy and Sissy Strut was recorded. But all of the books and records that's out there says that Sophisticated Sissy and Sissy Strut was recorded in '69 and released in '70. So that all threw me all totally out of whack, because I say, seemed to me, I was doing acid back then.
Okay. A lot? Often?
On the weekends. I didn't do it during the weekdays, but during the weekends were definitely running together. That was an acid thing. I can't ever believe that. Well, I do know for a fact that whatever drugs that I was doing and while I was doing them never depleted my idea of what music I was doing.
Okay, that's interesting.
So I can't say that if I was sober when all that was going down, that it would have happened that way.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. I mean, completely different mindset you would have made,
I would probably, as a sober person, I probably wouldn't even be on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, maybe
so. I probably wouldn't have got the gig,
Well, when you first started playing with Art, the Meters wasn't a thing yet, but he had already kind of recruited Leo into the band before you, right?
Leo was in the band, and I'm not sure for how long, because what I kind of remember being told that Leo, Sam Henry, B3 player Sam Henry, who was also the keyboard, he was the B3 player in Joyride. Sam Henry had the house gig at the Nightcap, and it was Sam Henry, Leo, a bass player. God, I can't think of his name now, but he got drafted.
Okay.
And in the key from going into the Army, he went join the Marine Corps. So that's how that spot, that bass line, that bass hole got available.
Okay.
And that might have been a couple of weeks or a couple of months before I got that gig. There was a drummer named Glenn on the gig, and saxophone player named Gary Brown. So I went into that gig because the bass player had gotten drafted. I wish I could remember his name.
This was the Neville Sounds, though, is what they were calling it at the time, or
Well,
was it not even called that?
it got called the Neville Sounds. A disc jockey came, a guy named George Burnett. Okay. He had came over, and he was a frequent visitor especially on Sunday nights. On Sunday nights, he would come in, and he was like a very popular disc jockey. So he would come in, he would jump up on the stage and and do his thing, and get the girls howling and screaming, and then he would, I really don't remember what the name of the band was when we were playing, before George, called us the Neville Sound Band, said, ladies and gentlemen, the Neville Sound Band, and, Art kind of liked the name of that. He kind of liked that ring, so that's what the name that we took to the quarters. Mm-hmm. But down on Bourbon Street, the keyboard player that was playing opposite of us, guy named Jack Ziegler, he used to call us up on, after he played his last song, he'd play Bill Bailey. And he won't you come home, Art Neville? Won't you come home and bring those boys along with you? So it was Art Neville and the boys.
Mm-hmm. Well, Art had already made a name for himself. He was kind of a seasoned veteran.
Art was a vet. Yeah, he was out there. He had hits. He had hit records out. Earlier years, when he went out with Aaron during the Tell It Like It Is period, he was out as tour manager for Aaron. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, maybe one of them called me up and tell me that, that when Art came off of that tour, off that Aaron's tour, he decided he wanted to start his own band. And he had went into the nightcap, saw Leo and that band playing with Sam Himmer's organ, and and sat in or something like that, and not only snatched Sam's gig, but he got to keep Sam's band,
took the band.
and his organ, because he had Sam's organ. He took the organ too.
He's so good, he steals people's instruments right up from underneath them, I guess. So by the time y'all had been at the nightcap and then moved to Bourbon, it had been pretty much what was to become the Meters, I guess, by then. Zigaboo had been picked up.
Zig came into the band because of the drummers had a minor surgery, and he was out for 10 days. And when he came back on a Sunday night, just to let Art know he was ready to come back to work. And the owner of the club told us that night when we got off that Glenn was there. And Glenn, heard Zig playing and turned to him and told him, "Say, I don't think I'm gonna get this gig back." and he just came Monday and picked up his gear and never was seen again.
Oh man! But I think the one thing that changed ultimately, aside from that, moving to Bourbon Street is when, Gary Brown was a part of the band. He didn't come with y'all to Bourbon Street.
No, he came to Bourbon Street.
He did.
He was down. He was down in the quarters. Gary Brown quit the gig probably a couple of nights after Martin Luther King was killed.
Was that like the impetus for him to quit?
No, the emphasis was because he was intimidating the people that were sitting at the piano bar.
All right, so describe Bourbon Street back then for people who might not realize. They think it's all neon lights and hand grenades.
Oh yeah, no, we were actually playing. It was basically a piano bar.
Okay.
Basically, they had a grand piano, and there were chairs and lips all the way around the piano. The configuration of the bound to both ends, so you can sit. At the piano. And,
literally on the piano.
Literally on the piano. And the lid of that piano was never opened. It was closed. So, people could see Jack. And we were playing down there. Art was playing, 90% piano. He didn't bring an organ down there because he hadn't owned the organ. He didn't own an organ yet.
Yeah, he hadn't stolen one.
He hadn't stolen it. Gary Brown was people, people would, ask him what his name or something like that. Because Gary Brown was a treacherous saxophonist, man.
He went on to have a fruitful career.
Yeah,
Like,
he
didn't disappear. Or
he
anything.
moved across the street from us and started a band over there. And he held that gig over there for 25 years or something like that. So the people would be asking him stuff, crazy stuff, and especially after Martin Luther King was assassinated. The night that Martin Luther King was assassinated, we were playing. And at the end of the night, when we were counting our tip money up, there were there were five. There were 5.22 caliber bullets in our tip jar. That was the night that Martin Luther King was killed, and it was like. So I think Gary had kind of gotten at angry, that anger. The thing that he wouldn't let go, and it was like he just thought that he was the only black guy in the band, because actually all the rest of us was red.
Well, I mean that's crazy. I've never heard that before. Do you think that? I mean, I don't even know where to go from there, quite honestly. So. Again, you're playing down there, and he ends up leaving the group. Bourbon Street at the time, like I was touching on before, wasn't necessarily bright lights and everything else. There was real music happening. It wasn't people just playing Brown Eyed Girl and Sweet Home Alabama at all the bars.
Right.
But was it mostly segregated type of clubs?
Well, I mean, I believe when I think harder about our time in the Ivanhoe, I might have seen one or two black couples, coming through there. More, there weren't a lot of black people out on Bourbon Street back then. It was, and if there were, they were on the street, and they didn't come in the clubs, So I would guess, yes, was it segregated? Yes. There were things that black musicians could and could not do on street. Two things was there was one thing, it was called bee drinking, I believe, that the club that we were playing in, we couldn't go sit at the bar and drink. So when we got off, in fact, when we first got down there was a beer closet off to the left of the stage, where you can walk off the stage and go in this closet, and and it was it was a closet. It was definitely a closet. Yeah. So it wasn't a dressing room. It was a closet where we used to go sit in the closet and just because we would be off of 1 hour. So you play an hour, you're off an hour, and then I got Leo and myself, I think, more than before anybody else. Leo and myself, we both like shooting pool. There was a pool hall across the street. So, Leo and I would go out and shoot pool, And in the pool hall, there were always 2 or 3 black guys that always hung out in the pool hall. And they were hustlers, and they used to go down there and make a lot of money playing shooting pool. Yeah. And but Frogman Henry was at a 544, I believe it was called. That was directly across the street, diagonally across the street from the Ivanhoe. Okay. So I used to go over and listen to Frog's band play. And I believe Gary might have been in that band for a while. All right. I kind of think Gary was in that band for a while. And then he started to playing opposite with other players. When Frog wasn't on, Gary would be on. And eventually Gary took the whole thing, and he would play the whole night verses, thing. And across the street from there was the Howard Johnson Hotel,
Right.
and they had a lounge in there that there was a female keyboardist, and she was I can't remember her name now, but she was one of the first people I ever seen that had it set up where she can play parts. She plays her parts into a recorder, and then they loop it and would play it back, and then she'd play something else, and she would even sing parts. So she was like a one-man personal band. She had that, and it was like amazing that she was doing that. I can't remember her name to save my soul, but she was, and I used to do that. And I bumped in walking, just so on my break I would sometimes just walk on Bourbon Street, and bumped into Johnny Vodakovich. And Johnny said, "Hey man, why don't you come down, hang out and play with us, And we was playing. He was playing and it was with Sam Henry.
All right.
He was playing at the what was the name? Well, it's the club that now, if you go down there, the club that has the legs swinging out the window.
Those Big Daddies.
Big Daddies.
Yeah.
Well, before that, I don't know what it was then.
Sorry, I knew that one too quickly. Huh?
we used to play behind the shake dancers.
All right.
We used to play behind, they weren't strippers. They were actually shake dancers.
Yeah, go-go.
Go-go girls.
Yeah.
But they were nastier than go-go girls. They were, real aggressive. And so we I would do that, and I would always end 5 minutes before the hour, so I can get back down, get back down. By 3, I think it was like 3 blocks. I had to go 3 blocks and get back to the Avenue. So that was, but Bourbon Street was what it was, and that, like I said, there was just things that black musicians couldn't do, and I think Johnny eventually moved over to playing with Al Belletto at the Playboy Club down there. Right. I think they held that gig until the club went away.
Yeah, until it closed, I think, yeah. These gigs that would go on for hours and hours throughout the night, 3, 4, 5, 6 nights a week sometimes. I guess at the Ivanhoe was 6 nights a week. Right?
Yes, Ivanhoe was 6 nights a week. I had 1 night off, Monday nights.
Yeah, I've heard you and other people say that the Meters is almost one of the original jam bands. Is that basically because y'all were worried about getting too monotonous or playing the same stuff over and over again, that you would just kind of feel it out?
I don't know if that was a thought.
No one was calling it a jam band back then. Yeah.
But it was I think that we got more into the jamming thing because when we went to Ivanhoe, we were playing tunes.
Yeah.
We were playing, we were playing everything from Wes Montgomery for the instrumental things that Leo was doing. We played Wes Montgomery. We played, Curtis Mayfield, the Impressions before Curtis Mayfield solo stuff. We would play Impression stuff where Leo, myself, and Ortiz would be singing all these intricate background parts and stuff. The 5 steps, not 5 steps, the 5th dimensions. We used to sing up and away. We were a cover band.
Okay.
And we were a cover band that had we didn't play those songs the way those songs went. We just had an air about our approach to those songs, and I think that's what that one Alan Toussaint's ear is that our interpretation of that music, of all of that music, from anywhere from the jazz stuff to the R&B stuff.
Well, you mentioned Alan Toussaint. When he brought y'all into the studio finally to become the house band, was it with the intention of these are the guys that I want to play these other songs? Was there ever talk in those early, the first days, like the first times you would go in there, that I think y'all can cut your own songs? Or was
No,
it always,
not at all.
Okay.
We were not given that Liberty or something like that. We were in there to be Alan Toussaint's house band.
Yeah.
No entertaining, no other thoughts, and anything else.
And is this correct? It was ultimately Marshall Sehorn who was the one that said, let's go ahead and lay down some tracks. Y'all play what you want to play.
It was after a Lee Dorsey session. We were in Cosmo Metasta's studio over on Camp Street. Right. And we had just finished doing some tracks with Lee Dorsey. And for Lee Dorsey, because the 3 records that we did with for Lee, I always have to say is for him, because Lee Dorsey was never in the studio when we recorded his songs.
Really? Never?
No, never.
Wow.
So maybe he might have came through one day, but he didn't. He didn't perform. Because I believe that Alan and Lee had a rapport vocally that that he just would be, when Lee's singing, it'd be just him and Lee Dorsey and the engineers in the studio.
I've heard things from people, on both sides of the equation working with Alan Toussaint. Some people that he was right there and he knew every note he wanted me to play. And other people say, yeah, we barely saw him. He only popped his head in every once in a while.
Well, it depends on the project. With the Meters, Alan popped his head into our sessions once or twice, that once I could recall. When we in the studio, we don't know what's going on in the control room. We found out years later that Alan had a line going up to his studio, up to his office above the studio, that he can monitor whatever's going on in the control room. He had control. He was able to monitor whatever was going on in the studio. Okay. But one of the things he never did. Well, this is how. Quick story of this. This is how the Robert Palmer project, the Sneaker Salad, three songs got put together.
Okay.
We were downstairs working out the song, and we recorded all 3 songs. And then Alan came down and made a couple of suggestions, and then we re-recorded those 3 songs, leaving certain air happening at the end of each one of those songs. And then him and Skip Godwin got together, and they pieced those 3 songs together, and made it run, the way it did. But he did that because he was able to hear the session going while it was going down. It was cool how he did that. Back to the us thing, that one of the times that he popped his head in the studio when the Meters was recording, I had brought my very first song to the band, and we had just recorded it, and I was in the control room listening to the playback. Alan stuck his head in the room while the playback, and I've told this story 100 times. So 101.
101, right here.
And he stuck his head in the control room, and he said, "Oh, some more of the same old thing." And just closed the door. It broke my heart.
Yeah.
It's absolute, because I just thought it wasn't the same old thing. It wasn't, it was kind of different from everything that we had been doing, because it was changes that we weren't doing a whole lot of back then. And Skip Godwin looked over at me and said, "That's a great title. The same old thing." So
Does it still haunt you?
That's
the title of that song that you brought to the table?
No, I like the song. I like it. I wrote it. It's my tune.
Like I said before, there's almost no question I can ask you that you haven't been asked, 100 times before. And is this still true? I remember a few years back hearing you say on stage, so it must be true, that Out in the Country is your favorite Meters song. Is that still true? Was it true then, and you were lying to the audience at the time, or what?
I think it was. It wasn't my favorite. It was one. It was one of it. I believe that that I think my absolute favorite Meter song was, if I had to pick a favorite Meter
You
song.
don't have to if you don't want to.
But no,
you
but
have
I mean,
to now.
there was a question. I'm kind of stuck now. I got to do it, and I would say Lonesome and Unwanted People.
All right. I mean,
And that's something that probably no one ever heard. I re-recorded that for a Running Partners record. I want to say Funky Go Nuts, but after listening to my performance of the record, I said, "Oh, that so sucks." You know, I thought I had a better handle on the song than that. And it's a beautiful song. Both versions, my version versus the Meters version, but I still like the Meters version better.
All right. Well, I mean, there's so many. The catalog for the Meters is just, it's become inherent in the DNA of not just New Orleans music, but far beyond the city, far beyond. I wonder, was there ever a time in those years, even up until the band broke up in the late '70s, that it had really occurred to you the impact that the music was having or will have? Was that ever a thought?
I don't think we realized. I don't think as a band. I don't think we realized what we were doing and that impact.
Yeah.
I mean, I think first of all, when we did Cabbage Alley record, it was the first abandonment of those first three records, those first three that instrumental band.
Yeah.
Because now we had Art Neville, who is an amazing vocalist, and he wasn't singing. Or, he sang maybe one or two songs on each one of those first three records, and we had, two amazing writers, Leo Nosentelli and Zigaboo, that, that wanted to write songs for Art to sing.
Yeah.
And at that point, Art wanted to start bringing in his own songs too, So, I think that once, I can kind of contribute it to the fact that there were bands that that opened shows for the Meters out there on the road, that jumped from opening acts to main acts, Starship acts and stuff like that, And I believe that those primary writers in the Meters started realizing that, man, we need to write songs more like that, more commercial and valued songs, rather than this syncopated thing that we do so well, that nobody's buying it because they just don't quite understand.
Yeah.
I mean, commercial music, everybody knew where one was. In the Meters catalog music, one was hidden.
Yeah. Those bands that were jumping y'all, that were all of a sudden hitting main success. You were, like you said, you were worried about not having that success. When you were playing the shows, people were dancing and shaking their ass, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
The music was having an impact.
Yes.
But it just wasn't being played on the radio station enough, and it wasn't being it wasn't selling commercially.
Exactly. Right. And and I believe that that the fact that the radio stations weren't on it, was the reason, because two things. I believe also, I have no way of proving any of this, but I believe that management wanted to keep the grips on the band. I don't think they wanted us to be a big band, a big act, because one, they have to start paying us.
Yeah.
And two, they got to start paying us.
Yeah.
And I believe that I think that Marshall Sehorn called that shots on that. So how, I believe when Warner Brothers Reprise did that, when Reprise took us from Sensu Records and brought us to California to record with David Rubinson, the very last album, New Directions. Of course, it was too little, too late. That they was going to take and promote that band, but the vision in the band was already too bad, and Art quit the band at the end of the session, so on our way home from that, when we at this, when we was at the hotel after the session, the then who became the manager of the Neville Brothers for a little while, short period of time, Rupert Surkoff, presented the guys in the band with a contract that that he was taking over management of the band, and he wanted us to sign the management agreement. But that was kind of a kind of weird thing because we were in a longevity contract with Marshall Sehorn.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did he work for Marshall Sehorn?
Exactly. He was basically, it was like, I want you to get these guys signed because the federal government have made it a law that managements can't do this, managers can't do that. Management can't be producer, booking agents. It's conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. So in order for us to get out, we as a record label, we gotta give up the management. So we'll give the management up to a front guy, and he's gonna front for us, but we control the pie. Or Rupert kind of put a twisty on them too. He kind of screwed them out of the Neville Brothers, All right. But it was that pretty much was like the like I said, Warner Brothers or Reprise Records, who's actually Warner Brothers. I think their decision to put that record out. I think it was Name Up in Lights was going to be the first song off that record, and then Be My Lady was going to be on a song. And they saw Be My Lady and Name Up in Lights as R&B hits, but the band broke up, and the record company said, "Oh, we just spent a whole bunch of money on this. They spent more money with us on that record than 3 records." Through the Marshall Allen catalog, and the record label said, "Later for you guys, man. Y'all on your own."
Well, man, we're not talk entirely about the meters, I promise. But you mentioned how Art had left the band. Is this true that he had actually quit the band in '69?
Oh yeah, He left the band.
What happened?
I
couldn't have been that long.
I keep thinking about why that actually happened. It was him and Zig had a disagreement about something, and Zig, we were at the corner of Tulane and what's that street is? I guess that's the street that right there where the public library is. Simon Bolivar, maybe? No, it's not Simon Bolivar. Elks Place.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Elks Place.
Yeah,
right? It was at that corner.
Yeah.
But we was on the side we was on the street side where the Tulane bus would stop and turn right and go on to Tulane Avenue. Mm-hmm. And we were at that corner, and whatever the discussion that Zig and Art was having, Zig said, "Man, screw this," and he got out of the vehicle and split. And we ended up getting Cyril to go play that little run that weekend or so with us on drums. Mm-hmm. But whatever the conversation was that Art and Zig had a disagreement about, the band kind of meaning me and Leo, leaned more towards what Zig was talking about. It had something to do with managing, who was managing the band.
Well, there you go. Like, you guys were already having trouble.
But no, and I mean the band leader, not management.
Okay,
but the band leader. We were supposed to, the Meters was a group that were of equal players. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we outvoted Art as being the band leader. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember who got to be the band leader. That was the strangest thing. But after we had that discussion, then Art, and that was a month or so later, all of us in the office at Marshall's office, and we decided that Art was not going to be the band leader anymore, and that Art said, okay, well, I quit. And he quit the band. And he quit the band for almost a year.
Was it almost a year?
Yeah,
Wow.
almost a year. And what brought us back to the table was the recording session of Cabbage Alley. No, Rejuvenation. No, was it? No, it was Rejuvenation.
Was it
It was
Rejuvenation?
the Rejuvenation.
I thought that came
record.
out 2 years after Cabbage.
Yeah.
Alley.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. You were there. I wouldn't know. The first band that you left town to tour with, was it Irma Thomas? Is that right?
Well, not really, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I had been. Irma was the first band I left the state of Louisiana with.
Okay, that counts.
Yeah. We went up to play a gig in Mississippi, and it was basically I was on that gig only because they needed a guitar because Walter had pawned his guitar and he didn't have a guitar. they hired me for my guitar.
Did you make sure they knew no solos?
So that was how that went down.
All right.
But yeah, Irma was the first artist I left the city, left the state with. I had been going back and forth to like Lake Charles, Baton Rouge, Booty, Thibodeau, and all those kind of places with Earl King, not Eddie Bo, but Earl King, Benny Spellman, Ernie Cato, doing stuff like that.
Do you like? I mean, maybe it's different now, I guess. But looking back, did you enjoy being a session musician and being part of a backing band? Did you like that, or did you like? Did you think that's what you were just going to do forever?
I still do that.
I know you still do it, but you front your own couple of bands too.
Yes, I have my own. I have two bands. Well, I have three bands, basically. Well, one Zigaboo's band that I'm a bass player in.
Yeah, was it for Foundation of Funk?
Foundation of Funk. But those are like three bands that I have a vote. Two of them I have a ultimate vote in one.
But when back then, did you think that, hey man, I'm touring with these other cats. This is it. I got it. I made it. Did you ever think that back then?
Well, I'm not sure if it was a I made it thing.
Yeah.
No, it was because some of those gigs were hard.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those gigs were, like we played gigs where the dressing room was the car you came there in.
Yeah.
And if you were lucky, there wasn't a fight that that somebody got hurt in the band.
Yeah.
So no, it was rough. It was rough. Touring around, stuff. When in '69, when Art left the band, we kind of not went out. We replaced Art with a percussionist named Kim Joseph and a keyboardist for a short period of time. When Fred Raleigh was came to be the guy just before we started. We went back in, but there was another Mario Medius, I believe his name was. They were in the band for a little while, and we hired really well. So the band went from being 4 pieces to almost 6 pieces. A percussionist, an organ player, and a front singer, because none of us was at that point considered lead singers. And at that time, they didn't even want me singing background.
Really?
Although on Bourbon Street, I sang the whole lot of background.
Yeah.
But for some reason or another, the music that when this stuff got into the studio and stuff that they would bring in other voices to sing on the record, and then on the gig I would sing that part. So yeah, I thought that we that as a side man, again, my idea as a side man is to become a part of the band that I'm performing with.
Who did you learn that lesson from first?
Oh,
Or was there someone that put you in your place real quick because you were acting cool or something?
It may have been David Lasty.
Okay.
It may have been David Lasty, but I don't think, man, I think that I have always just been lucky. I think just lucky to just be able to place myself in that pocket where I needed to be at. I mean, I can tell you what, something, I blame Fess on that.
Okay.
Because I did. We played the very first Jazz and Heritage Festival on the fairgrounds with Professor Longhair, Zig and myself.
All right.
And one of the things that I realized with playing with Fest, and after seeing Fest with other players, one of the things that I realized was that Fest's left hand, is a bass line. And as a bass player, if you can't play the exact same notes that he's playing and in the rhythm that he's playing it, then you have to know how to play and get away from it. So allow that left hand to perform what it does. And and I think that's probably where I found a place. The recording with Alan, was a lesson in itself. Also, is because Alan had specific bass lines that you played, and you don't get away from it. It's because like the idea was that he heard all of the music. He knows stuff that you don't know, and if you play one note more than what he gave you to play, you interfering with something that's coming later. So, yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, Snooks used to always say this: "Hey, Powder, if you pay attention, you're gonna learn something." And that's what I used to do. I paid attention.
Who would you think is, if you don't have to say a name if you don't want, who was the toughest person to be a sideman for?
Snooks.
Okay, that's fair. I was waiting for like we've James Booker has come up a few times, and not that it was ever difficult to play with him. It was always more in awe of playing with him. Like, how am I ever going to keep up with this guy?
I think I played with Booker once.
That's it, just one time?
One time, I believe, just one time. It was a club downtown called Lou and Charlie's. And it was James Booker, Charles Neville, James Black, and myself.
That's a pretty good band.
It was like, I just thought I was totally out of my thing, because, what was going to be happening. But it got even worse because on the break, we played 3 sets. So the second break, after the second break, Booker didn't come back. So at that point, James got on piano. One of Jan's students got on drums, and we started playing some music that I was like way over my head. I mean, it was like, whoa, what is this? Some different timing and stuff. And James would just tell me and say, pay attention, just listen at what's going on. It's going to happen again, So it was like one of the things about music, unless it's something that don't come back, music has a tendency to come back.
Yeah.
So that A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, C, A, but A always seems to come back.
Yeah.
So you just have to learn where A starts and where B ends to know that A is coming back, And that's just paying attention.
The Wild Chapatoulas album, they came out in 75, 76, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of those things at the time. Did you think that it would become the cultural phenomenon that it is reflected upon today?
Oh, absolutely. I knew that was going to be a good record. I mean, once again, it was the Meters' efforts musically. We arranged that record.
Yeah.
Didn't get no credit for it. The Neville brothers took all the credit, as the musical directors and everything, and that part, and I've always had a problem with that kind of stuff because the Meters have done it so often. We did it for Robert Palmer, we've done it so often, and it's because we were innovative to some degree. We would hear something plain and simple and develop it into something that much is better, And we did that really well, especially, Zig, Leo, and myself. You know, and we used to always say, but you don't tell Art never what to play, because he's just going to play what's right. He's whatever he played is going to be right.
Yeah.
You know. So you know, it was never, you never had to tell Art nothing. You know, it was, you know, he did it. What he did was correct always. You know, and you know, but when things like that happen, and it happens to us so many times, you know, it's always just kind of leaves a thing, a disappointment, because, you know, it's like, man, you give yourself to a project, and then you get ignored, you know. But that's life too, you know. Again, to go back to maybe one of the other things when you're talking about the hip hop world, hip hop community, you know, those guys were only half the problem. You know, the disc jockeys that played that music, if the disc jockeys were using, you know, all of their knowledge of music. Now maybe they just didn't have that knowledge.
Yeah, maybe they didn't know.
Maybe they just didn't know where that music came from. You know?
Considering, you know, like we said at the top, 178 samples of
Yeah.
whatever else. It's a good chance a lot of them just came upon it because it was sitting in the studio and they found it. Oh, this is cool. Let's try it out.
Right.
And they didn't know. They thought that the studio might have owned it or something.
Right.
You know?
I'm not sure how that went about, you know, but a lot of guys. Well, it was a great story, man. We were the Funky Meters was out in California. We did a little short tour, and the last date of the tour was down at a college down below below Los Angeles. You know, about an hour drive from Los Angeles, going south. And the opening band was sort of like it was a hip hop kind of group, you know. And they played their set, and you know, and we went on and we started playing our set, and we played, you know, we played Cordova. And when we was playing Cordova, you can hear the guys ran out of the dressing room. You know, and there's about 12 of them. You know, and they ran out of the dressing room, and they was all this looking at the side of the stage. You know, because they recognized the groove, the pockets, Cordova. You know, but the rap part never came up. You know. So they kind of went back in their dressing room, and then later on, we played Look a Pie Pie, and then it happened again. They already running out, you know. So after I think it was two more songs, Jungle Man and something else, I believe, that, you know, they had gotten that had been used like that, and so at the end of the evening, and Russell Baptiste being who he is, you know, the drummer from that band, drumming a couple of the guys, was saying, "Man, the show is nice. How you guys rearrange, you know, those songs, man, those such and such songs." And Russell just lost his on him. You know, he went total off, and he called him a couple of the X words and stuff, you know, and said that was their original songs. Dumb stuff. So, you know, and he said, "Man, y'all ought to go do your homework, see where that stuff came from." Well, it's exactly the same thing that the disc jockeys could have been doing, you know. The disc jockey would take and play All the Girls Love Me, and then he'd go back and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, this is what it originally sounded like."
Yeah.
And, you know, then that whole hip hop community would have got aware of the work that the Meters contributed to the hip hop community.
Absolutely. You mentioned eating acid on the weekends and doing the drugs and everything like that. Let's talk about getting sober. Been sober over 30 years now. Is that
Over
right?
32 years. This year will be 33 years.
33 years. What was the light switch that turned on?
Thought I was losing the family.
Yeah.
Last words I heard out of my head was "Come on, Trina, let's go."
No.
And
Wife taking the daughter out?
well, she was taking Katrina to church, but me in my stupid state that I was in was like, all I heard was "Come on, Trina, let's go," and bam, the door slammed. And for whatever long period of time, I don't know how long she was gone, but when she came back, I was balled up in a knot on the sofa, just crying my eyes out. You know, was losing my shit. And she called my mom, and my mom came over, and you know, my mom called Lindy Boggs, and Lindy Boggs called someone at the over in St. Tammany, the Bowling Green, and my mom said, "So you want to do this?" And I said, "Yeah, I got to do this. I'm through with my family," and that was it.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to save my family. During the process of getting and staying sober was the fact that I started realizing that I was doing this for me. You know, because you know one of the things that I never paid attention to was that the phone wasn't ringing as much as it used to, because people just didn't know which one of us was going to show up. You know, so it was a eye-opening situation. But you know what triggered it was the fact that well, I guess I can tell this story.
Whatever you're comfortable saying, yeah.
I had just left the coke dealer's house. Down here, he lived out by the lakefront. I was on Franklin Avenue.
What address? I'm just kidding.
I was on Franklin Avenue, headed back towards the city, and I pulled up to the red light. That must have been Fillmore, because the next street would be Gentilly, I believe.
Is that the next street? I don't.
The next red light would have been Gentilly. I was in that outside land up at the top, and the police car, cruiser, two guys, pulled up in that middle lane. I had just put the vodka bottle back between my legs, and had the coke spoon up to my nose, and I saw them out the side of at the corner of my eyes. I put down, and even put the thing down. What saved me was out in that inside lane, all the way on the inside, a convertible pulled up, gorgeous white woman, blonde hair flying in the wings, and they were screwing with her.
Oh man.
You know, they didn't pay no attention to me. They was, "Hey, Janie Mae."
Thank God for loud white women, I guess, right?
You know, my leg was jumping. You know,
Yeah.
they all pulled off together, and at that point, they pulled off together. I got over in that right lane, and at that next red light, which was Gentilly Boulevard, I made that right turn and drove home. And I drove home, and I was scared to death. To death. And but I didn't throw away my cocaine, and I didn't stop drinking my vodka. But I drove home, and then when I got home, because I had to call Errol had to take Trina to church, and Trina was going to be late because I was late getting home.
Yeah.
And that's when like I said, the last words I heard was, "Come on, Trina, let's go." Bam. And that was the end of that.
Did you have to stop playing music for a while?
Well, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
In my 5th week, there was a gig that was on the books with Snooks Eaglin right here.
All right.
Right here. And I asked my counselor, could I come out and play that gig because it was on the books, and I had, pretty much my 5 weeks that I was in there, I was an honor roll student. I was really good. I was really good. Yeah. I was actually even tutoring some of the kids that was, they were junkies in that thing, like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
Worse junkies than I was. And so the head of the little got all the others got the doctor and and the owner and the management and everybody got together and they discussed it, and they said, so it was two rules. One, where they figured out how long it took me to get from St. Tammany to Tipitina's. I had to do a urine sample before I left, and had to do a urine sample when I came back. I had an hour to get back to the system after the gig was over with, and we couldn't. The first time that Snooks was never big on encores anyway, but that night for some reason or another they wanted an encore. You know, and I told Snooks, I said, bro, I can't. I gotta leave. I gotta leave. You know, and Sonny kind of got Snooks to let me go, and Snooks played by himself. You know, and I hit the door, and Errol drove me across the lake.
I'm surprised they didn't see if you could pay to have a counselor come with you just to babysit or something or watch you.
Well, I think that the whole idea was to see if I could be trusted. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is two things was going to happen with that whole idea was, one, whether or not I could actually do it.
Yeah.
Whether or not I could actually play music, because I have been playing music, for 30 some odd years, about 25 years loaded. So do I know how to play?
Yeah.
Is this, for real?
How'd the gig go?
The gig was great.
Okay, yeah. All right.
I mean, that's one of the few gigs that I don't have a copy of. I don't have a recording of, because I didn't have a recording set up so that Sonny might have a recording of that gig.
I mean, we can ask him. Sonny, if you're watching this, 1988, right?
Yes,
Snooks Eagle in 1988. Someone must have it somewhere, right? I hope.
And it was like 2 weeks before Halloween.
All right. Since you're talking about playing at Tipitina's, do you remember the first time you played at Tipitina's? Did you play at the 501 Club, actually,
yes.
before it was Tipitina's? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you remember your first gig as it being Tipitina's?
Well, the very first gig, I kind of remember it was that weekend, and I think it was I want to say it was the Reds, the Meters, and Professor Longhair played. And what order, I'm not sure.
You're talking about the opening weekend, the very first weekend?
The very first weekend.
I don't know if the Radiators might have been the Rhapsodizers.
The Rhapsodizers,
yeah,
maybe, huh?
Maybe,
yeah. I mean, I was listening to Reggie's thing, and I have a recording, and I haven't heard it. I have two cassettes that says the last Rhapsodizers.
Yeah.
It was supposedly the very last Rhapsodizers show with Becky Corrin playing bass on it.
You haven't listened to this yet?
No, I haven't heard it. It's being digitalized right now.
Right.
In fact, it's done.
Okay.
It was the guy, when the guy got the tapes and he saw the album, and he said that was the first one he did.
I don't know. I would love to hear it too, and I'm sure Reggie and the other guys would.
Well,
love to hear it
I was
as
playing. I sent the photograph of the tapes to Dave.
Okay.
And Dave said, "Well, I don't think I'm on that gig."
No, he probably wasn't. Yeah.
And he says he thinks it was Clark Vreeland and Camille.
Yeah, well, I think the Rhapsodizers was Camille, Ed, and Frank. I don't know if the other guy, Dave and Reggie, might not have been part of the original Rhapsodizers at all.
Huh? No. Reggie wasn't. Reggie wasn't a part of the original band.
Yeah.
The original band was Becky. Becky was the bass player. And I think she had an accident out front of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, she got hit by a car out on the side.
I've never heard that.
Loading her gear out. I think that's where it was. It was side of Tipitina's.
No, that's terrible.
And she the anesthesia. She died from the anesthesia.
I've never heard that story before.
I mean, I kind of remember. No, I'm getting it confused with the other guys, the ones that does the big festival in Tennessee now.
The Bonnaroos.
Bonnaroo guys. They started down. I want to say that I thought that these 501 guys that little club of 7 or 8 other guys, whatever it was, when they got brought into here, they had a little festival. No, maybe I'm getting them mixed up with the Bonnaroo guys.
Yeah, I mean, there was Superfly.
Yeah,
Superfly.
Superfly
They didn't
guys.
form until mid-'90s, I think, as Superfly.
I'm getting them mixed up with something else.
Yeah.
But I think but the first gig we did for this club, it was 501. And
when it became Tipitina's, just as a musician, what did you think? Did you think it was going to work? Or was it just like, oh, this is neat, we'll see how long it lasts?
well, at that time, when it first became, what year did Tipitina's become Tipitina's?
77.
Yeah, see, we were touring. We were a touring band, so we would pop in here. We were probably not playing as often at the club. I think we were more like treated like specialties acts.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't even know that, someone's probably going to correct me because it might be wrong, that the original Meters might not have played here until years after in the reuniting days.
No, I would think that we were here before.
As original Meat, like full four members?
As original 4 players, yeah.
Okay.
I want to definitely know. I think we played the club, probably once or twice every year.
Okay.
I believe. Could be wrong though.
Well, y'all were probably doing 8-9 months a year on the road too,
Yes.
though, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're home, you're probably not looking for too many extra gigs.
Not not as the Meters.
Yeah.
We would try and get away from each other as quickly as possible.
Yeah. There was a lot of Neville Brothers and other different various.
But
acts.
I was going down and playing on in the quarters with David Lasty, playing on the street, playing traditional jazz and R&B, and I looked forward to that as often. I mean, as soon as I got home, I would already call David and say, "I'm gonna be home." So he would let whoever was playing bass, let him know that Porter's coming in.
Yeah. When you look at the bands that you have now, and you've enlisted some of these guys from these next generation, you got your Terrence, who is an absolute monster behind the drums, and Chris Royal, who sits in with sax with running partners as well, and Chris Adkins playing guitar, who we talked about. What is it about some of these guys from this younger generation? Like, are you already kind of telling that, hey, in 30, 40 years, these guys are going to be sitting at a place like this talking about their times when they joined up with George Porter's band?
Well, I would hope.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I feel like you're good at surrounding yourself with kind of the future funk all-stars of
I've
the
been
city.
lucky. I've been lucky enough to to be, especially drummers. I really have been lucky. I can't think. There are few. There are 1 or 2 or 3 drummers that I would say that I would turn the gig down if they were on it.
Yeah.
And I have. I say it, put it that way. But for the most part, inside of my own organizations, I've just always been lucky enough to have a drummer that not only was a great drummer, but a drummer that brought something to the table. Russell Batiste is a genius, man.
Yeah.
He's a genius. I know there's nothing that you can't say about Russell other than his genius. But like most geniuses, they're madmen. And that was the thing. But he's a genius, man. And I've always admired his ability to. I mean, he's a musical arranger, man.
As good of a drummer as he is, he can do that with all the instruments.
Yes. And I mean, if you ever have a Russell Batiste record, I think he has 2 albums out there, and every note that's played on all those records, he wrote. It's his music. He wrote it. Nobody can. He even wrote their solos. He said, "This is what your solo sounds like." I mean, he's a genius. Terrence. Terrence when Terrence was I'll give 5 songs. It would be we used to do a kind of a jam thing where we would tie in 3 songs, and it would be funk something is it either go either way, either be Junko Partner or Iko, or not Iko, Junko Partner or They All Ask For You. And then we would go into a version of Sissy Strut, the original version of Sissy Strut. And then I would put Happy Song in the thing. And it was just 4 songs. Well, I gave Terrence this music, and we had been off, because when I broke the band up at that point, because I said, man, I needed to take a break. Yeah. And then I decided I wanted to start playing again. So my daughter told me about Terrence first. She said, I know this drummer from in the church. He played at our church or something like that. He's really cool. And so I asked Raymond Weber about I said, man, you ever heard of this kid from Baton Rouge, man? And Raymond said, oh man, he's good. He's good.
I would trust Raymond's word too.
Yeah. So so then I contacted Terrence. I gave him the work tape, and he called me like 2 days later. But he said, man, I'm ready. No, that's not the way it went. That's not the way it went. I gave him the 4 songs, and then he came to a rehearsal with me and Brent Anderson at my house. Okay. And that's when and at that point, when he first started off Funk Something This, it was like me and Brent looked at each other and said, whoa, man, this guy got a pocket, man. He got a feeling for this. And so I don't even think we got to Happy Song. We just, by the time we played Sissy Strut, we was like, okay, man, yeah, bro, you got the gig.
You got the gig.
Yeah. And I already had, cassettes printed up of all my music. Mm-hmm. And, when I gave him the cassettes, and I said, hey, man, take some time and check it out, and, we were looking at you, shouting at you, Man, Terrence called me 2 days later and said, hey, bro, I'm ready, bro, when we can start working. I said, well, no, bro, you got to hold off. I got to learn this stuff, too. I've been away from this music for a couple of months. I gotta put my pocket in my thing. But it was like, it was cool. And then Chris came along, Chris Rowe came into it. It was fun. Because, we were so used to, I was big on a horn section and running partners. At one time we had a 4-piece horn section. Yeah. And then when the 3 of the members of the horn section, got Alan Toussaint took 2 of them, and Harry Connick Jr. took Mark Mullins. So it was like, well, so much for the horn section, because I wasn't even going to look for other players. I mean, I just I probably cut myself short, but it was something about those guys, the way they worked together was it was just amazing. And so it became John Grove was on keyboards at that time. And John said, well, give me a few minutes, man. Let me work this out. And he called Mike Limler. And him and Mike Limler worked out all of the songs that was used to be horn songs. And he worked them out between 2 keyboard players. Yeah. And then John called me up and said, well, I think we're ready, but I just want you to call a rehearsal. And I called a rehearsal, and then was it, oh, yep. Because this is a workable thing. But at that point, I had really pissed off my wife.
Really?
Oh yeah, because she was all about the horns. Oh, she loved her some horns, man. That was not the 2 keyboard band was not her idea of running partners band. So yeah, but eventually. Then we eventually went back to when John left and Jelly Bean left. Russell Baptiste came back to the band. And we started bringing in the 2 of the horns. It never got back up to 4 again until probably the last 10 years maybe. At Jazz Fest I would use the 4 horns, and only at the fairgrounds I would use the 4 horns.
There's just an interesting story, because this is me ramping it down. Talking about food. I heard a story that one time you were on the road and you were getting okra sent to you from Louisiana so you could make proper gumbo for people on the road. Is that true? Did you ever do that?
No.
No, that's a false.
I don't think that's true because I don't believe I ever made no gumbo. I believe. Oh, you know what it was? I know what it was. We were doing a Tori Amos session.
Okay.
And we were in Utah, not Utah, one of them desert countries, cities.
Desert countries.
like somewhere where
Arizona, New
somewhere we were out. I
something
think
like
it might have been New Mexico.
Okay.
And they wanted to, and we were talking about, we were just talking about food.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? Carlo Nuccio was the drummer.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And Carlo actually cooked it.
Okay.
But I called home and I called home and asked Era to send us the ingredients to making an okra gumbo, and Era sent us the ingredients, and then Carlo actually cooked it.
All right. Do you do much cooking?
Oh, I love cooking.
Yeah.
I don't, not as much as I used to. I love what I cook.
All right. Well, one of the last things that we talk about on this program with everyone is po' boys. And I've told the story, 50 times by now about over at Guys how Stanton has a signature po' boy called the Bomb. I'm wondering what's your go-to po' boy, and more specifically, I want you to create your own signature po' boy.
Man, when I heard that question the other day with Reggie, I sat down and thought about my sandwich.
Yeah.
And I forgot it.
I'll tell you what.
It was a great sandwich.
What's your go-to? You got a standard that you normally just lean on? You just fried shrimp.
I'm a big shrimp guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like seafood.
Yeah.
I'm big, but my sandwich came back.
Okay, good. We got someone who actually put. Do you hear that, Ace? We have someone who put some time into this.
my sandwich came back. I mean, I listened to Regis Scanlon's conversations,
Mm-hmm.
so I know the question.
All right.
If I had to create my own po' boy, it would be fried oysters
Okay.
with blue cheese crumble,
Interesting.
and I think it might have had bacon.
I mean, that's pretty good. I'm on the fence about blue cheese myself sometimes. It works sometimes it doesn't. I would try it.
I would never. I don't like the blue cheese that's where you don't actually run into lumps.
You like it chunky?
I like chunkies.
Okay.
I like chunky pieces. I like.
You don't like the blue cheese, like the salad dressing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the good places where you get salad dressing,
Mm-hmm.
blue cheese salad dressing, there is lumps in it.
Yeah.
But when you go to the corner store and buy a bottle of blue cheese dressing, there's no blue cheese in there. They say it's blue cheese, but I don't believe it.
Yeah. Would it be dressed with lettuce, tomatoes, pickles?
No.
Mayonnaise,
I don't eat. My sandwiches are usually butter. If it's a French bread, it's just butters. And I've gotten away from pickles because I don't like the pickles that they make anymore. I think the pickles has changed from the pickles days when I was a kid.
Pretty sure the recipe is probably pretty similar.
Yeah.
It's you that's changed.
Yeah, I
not
just
the
like
pickles.
the French bread, buttered.
I like the buttered French bread.
And then the oysters, the blue cheese, the blue cheese sprinkles, and cover it up.
Piece of bacon.
And a piece of bacon. That would be the sandwich.
What
And I'm
would
gonna
you
have to
call it,
make
though?
that. What would I call it?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know.
Same old thing.
Hey.
Well, to be named later. We'll let people email George Porter's website. It's just georgeporterjr.com?
GeorgePorterJr.com. Yeah.
Nick, put that up there. Email, send him your submissions for what we're going to call that po' boy. And I don't know. The 100th caller gets one for free. I don't know. And as you know, no one leaves empty-handed. Oh, wait, there is one more thing. No, I totally threw this off the rails. We have someone, I'm about to show you a photo. I want you to identify this person and tell the best story you have about this person. I have the name covered up in case you don't know who it is. And
Stanley Jones.
for anyone who can't see this, since you can't, this is a grown man holding an engine block in the air. We're going to show it up here so people can see it.
I actually had, one of the photographs is missing now, but there's 4 photographs, 4 of them. And the first one shows him reaching down into this old truck.
Yeah.
And lifting that engine out of the truck. So there's a photograph like this, and as he turned, walking to the table.
Well, it lives very safely up here in the office.
Yeah.
For anyone, Nick will
Michael
scan this
Michael
and put it-
Smith, I believe, was the one who took those photographs.
Oh, yeah, I believe so too. It was part of the conversation, I think, with Leslie Smith about
Yeah.
getting you that little flyer. Tell me a Stanley story, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, Stanley John was, he was the doorman here for many, many years. When we did the European Rolling Stones tour, Rupert thought he needed a bodyguard between him and the meters because he just started feeling that there was a lot of anger inside.
y'all
the
were gonna
band.
attack
like
him?
we was going to leave him in Europe somewhere.
So it was his own bodyguard,
So it was
not
his.
the band's
It wasn't
bodyguard.
the band bodyguard, but it was under the premises that he was there to bodyguard the band and to bodyguard our money,
Okay.
to protect our money, because we're gonna be carrying. We was gonna be picking up a whole lot of money,
Traveling countries, yeah.
Stanley John, and there was a kid, a sound engineer named Curtis Slavin was on a tour with us. And Curtis somehow gave Stanley Jones some grief. And we in his dressing room, and literally, Stanley started chasing Curtis. They were really running on the wall.
What?
I'm really serious. They went up on the wall in this trailer because Stanley was trying to get to Curtis. It was funny. There wasn't a whole lot of stories about it, Stanley. I mean, one that I believe that he had a mixture that he drank that he said that that gave him his strength and everything.
Do you know what it was in?
No.
What was in? Okay.
Don't know what was in it, but it was the whatever it was the stuff that eventually killed him, because it hardened his arteries, and it eventually killed him. But it was whatever this stuff was, I guess it was a man-made steroid.
Okay.
Because he was a strong little guy, man. He was.
I've heard stories of him literally like one hand picking people up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's actually throwing people out of these doors from the middle of the room. he have somebody open that door.
That's phenomenal. George, thank you again so much. Like I said, no one leaves empty-handed. If you wouldn't mind reading your certificate suitable for framing
man,
your,
you gonna make me
your
read
prize.
this?
Yeah, and there's a folder. Don't worry. It's in cursive a little bit. It's difficult to read. I know it's tricky.
All right, broadcast. We hereby certificate that you, George Porter Jr., are officially officially awesome and
that's a
being
weird phrase.
interviewed on this day, February 3rd, 2021, for absolutely no military compensations whatsoever. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
And you're welcome.
And this is my folder.
That's your folder. And don't forget your little flyer. Seriously, George Porter Jr., you are a delight all the time. I don't think the world will never be able to thank you enough for what you've been able to spread out through people's earballs and eyeballs and everything else. So it's truly a delight. Thank you so much for giving me your time and sharing it with us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, seriously. I'll go ahead and wrap it up and then let you leave because I know that we've kept you here way
Wow.
longer than anticipated.
I'm 4 minutes longer than Reggie.
Well, I mean, we didn't start on time. So don't worry. We're going to cut all the stupid stuff I said out. So. It's gonna be way short. This is gonna be like 5 minutes. We're gonna keep that Stanley story. And that is it. That is it. Thanks so much to Daniel Ace Ward over here doing some sound for us. Tanner Logan upstairs controlling the cameras. Nick for doing the editing. Denise Sullivan on hair and makeup for George Porter Jr. as well. Thank you, Denise. And thanks for watching this on tipatinas.tv. Thanks to nugs.net for letting us use the cameras and equipment. Thank you to Tipatinas for letting us use the room. And I've said this before, if anyone wants to send us an actual physical letter to Tipatinas, 501 Napoleon Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70115. Nick put that on the screen so people can see it. You send me a physical letter, I will mail you back an actual sticker. So I'm waiting to see if people remember how to write letters anymore. And they will get a prize if they can.
So how many shows are this?
Oh, we've done this, I don't know, like 30 times.
Oh, cool.
We haven't posted them all. Again, like we just kind of started doing this haphazardly on a whim and then started posting it in no specific order. Like, thank you, everyone, and do the ramp down, close down the credits, and do all the stuff. Thank you, George, seriously.
All right, thank you. You're right.
It's a pleasure. Oh, don't forget the cookies, too.
Oh.
They're good. If you like them, I'll tell her to make you more.
Okay.
They're not too sweet. They're sweet. They're chocolate chip.